Auschwitz survivor Eva Neumann, known as Bobby, is on a journey into her past along with granddaughter Esther. She's come to Poland on a mission to tell her story to a new generation.
The sky lit up by fire because the chimneys were all burning. And then eventually they sorted us out, women, men, women, men. We're doing something which is worthwhile doing. It's fantastic to see how much these groups achieve by going and teaching them. And they come out happy and different people when they left.
It's an ordinary weekday evening in Manchester for Bobby Neumann and her grandchildren.
Bobby, you know Sparrows Lego? Play with Lego.
As her name suggests, in some ways she's the archetypal Jewish grandmother.
I would describe my mother as a very selfless, loving, very, very warm, incredible. She is my hero, actually, my mother.
Bobby is my Bobby, and I've always lived with Bobby since I was born. And I feel a very, very close connection with my grandmother.
My mother has certain very admirable qualities which are difficult to find elsewhere.
But behind the happy exterior lies a difficult past, which Bobby kept to herself for over 60 years.
I was born in Czechoslovakia, which before the war belonged to Austro-Hungary. I was born in 1929. My name was Eva Birenbaum. At home I was called Maidi. It was a town only for religious Jews, and more than 50% was Jewish, and even the non-Jews spoke Yiddish. It was a real Jewish town. As a child, I saw that every Jew who lived in town was called Birenbaum, that every Jew only called Birenbaum, because there was a lot of us. I can't remember unhappiness. I can't remember I was unhappy. We were a very loving family. I think it's a good motto. If you come from a happy home, a loving home, the rest of the life is much easier. My father believed a lot in education. We said, if this goes on with anti-Semitism, they can take everything away from you, but they can't take what you have put into your brains. And we had private teachers, and my brother had Hebrew teachers, and they created a Beis Yankov, where I used to go after school. We used to go to Beis Yankov. And my parents tried very, very hard to give us some kind of education. Love and religion, it was concentrated very much on the family life. They davened, and it was taken for granted that you ate kosher and you davened and you went to school and learned about religion and Hashem and believing, and you didn't speak about it. We lived in the mountains, and it was a very, very beautiful district. It was all mountain, and we had a kind of hotel, so cold, and lots of people came for holiday because it had mineral, hot, green, pine water. Hot water came from the earth, and people used to come from all over. The Belser Rebbe used to come because I think he suffered from arthritis, so those days it was called rheumatic something. And they came to take the bath, and we were really we had enough room to host them. And we were always very excited when he came, because it was the shrine, so the big pots and pans came out, and the falafel was boiled, you know, it's like a pasta, and he used to all the neighboring towns used to come for the shrine on Friday night and bench in our house, and it was very exciting. As children, there was no other excitement. There was no television and no video.
But soon, political events in neighboring Germany started to intrude. After the Nazis came to power, the spirit of fascism infected the entire continent with hatred of Jews.
I remember my older brother's bar mitzvah, which was, thinking of it now, was a tragedy. It was, he lied beautifully and he sang beautifully, and the whole school sang, but everybody was crying. And I couldn't understand why people cry at a bar mitzvah. You know, even today I think, it's such a nice thing to have a bar mitzvah. Why do they cry? But it was the beginning of really things going wrong.
On September 1st, 1939, the weather perfect for mechanized warfare, Hitler unleashed his blitzkrieg.
In the years that followed, persecution intensified. Its ultimate expression was to be the final solution, a plan for the annihilation of Jews across Europe. Bobby's family waited with a sense of impending disaster.
It was April 1944, and we had a place in our town, in Soibo, where there was a big military headquarters. And there was a Jewish army. Because we were on the border, they came back or going to wherever, but the station was in our town. And there was a lot of Jewish soldiers there. So it came to Pesach, and we invited about 30 or 40, I can't remember, but there was a lot of us at the Seder table. And everybody was trying to be jolly, but there was a terrific atmosphere, which as a 15-year-old, I couldn't judge what it was, but there was, I knew there was. But looking back, I think I knew why, because they must have known that something was going to happen. Matriarch packed everything, then we went to bed, and I heard my father and my brothers going to shul very early. And about 10 minutes later, they came back. They said, there's a curfew, you're not allowed out. Soldiers came in, black shirts, and not just 2 or 3, but quite a few of them, just like occupied every room. And they taken all our jewelry and made me take all what I had on and taken off. And they said, everybody can take a case, what you can carry, not more, because you're going to walk. My mother had this little case, which used to be called the necessary. And there was always a pair of candles and matches in that bag, never came out. It was always kept in that bag for traveling. And of course, talis and tefillin and chumash, and everybody had one set, one piece of the set, and everybody had a siddur, and but everybody had the tehillim. That was, you know, whatever we could take. Books were heavy, and my father said, don't overload it. So we marched to the shul, and all the townspeople came to the shul. And that was starting to be really very emotional and everybody davening and shouting and saying Tehillim. And we didn't know, you know, the not knowing was worse than the facts, not knowing what now.
Bobby's group of students from the charity JRoots has entered Auschwitz and is getting to grips with its dark history. Bobby remembers the original journey here with painful vividness.
And we were taken to a place called Munkaj, where there was a brick factory. And we were there for about 3 weeks, and then after 3 weeks, took us to the station, and we had to climb up in these wagons. I think we were between 80 and 100 people pushed in there. And It's undescribable and unbelievable. But we managed somehow. They were trying to pray, they were trying to daven, they were trying to say Tehillim, they wanted a drink. There was 2 buckets, one with water, one without. Men and women together and children crying. It was undescribable. It seems that my uncle died in the same wagon. Some people say it was the other wagon, but I saw the body being taken out. The smell and the shouting and the crying and then the silences. It was so bad that I can't even talk about it because I don't believe it.
After a grueling journey, finally they came to Auschwitz.
I don't know exactly how long we were in these wagons, 3 days, I think. And after that, we arrived in Auschwitz and I opened the gates. Hundreds of thousands of people all over. And it was all striped uniform. They were the capos who worked, who organized the whole thing there with the SS men together. But they were the helper who pushed us off and told us where to go. One of the capos came up to my father and he said, how old is she? So he said, 15. She said, say 18. And I remember saying to my father, how can I lie? You know, like it wasn't on. So this is to save your life, you didn't save my life, but if it's necessary, you can say it. It was never asked. Anyhow, after that, we were marked. Was 3 German fellows standing in the middle with a table in front of them. Each had this leather whipping thing, and if you didn't do it quick enough, they gave you some, they hit you. Come on, come on. And all of a sudden, I'm standing in a group, and my mother wasn't there, and my brothers weren't there. Nobody was there. I was on my own. So I started screaming, and the couple came out and said to my friends, calm her down, she's not allowed to shout. And that was it. And I saw them again.
Bobby's mother and siblings were already on their way to their death in the gas chambers. Their bodies would be cremated. They were among 2 million people slaughtered at Auschwitz by the end of the war. Only those like Bobby, fit enough to work, were allowed to live. It was many years before Bobby could bring herself to talk about these painful experiences.
So you didn't speak, and nobody spoke. I always thought I don't speak, but nobody spoke. For 60 years I never told my husband, I never told my children.
The odd story, we saw the numbers on the arm, but it was meaningless to us because we didn't know anything. We were never taught anything.
Unlike many survivors, she was never frightened to display her tattoo. She didn't do it purposely, but she always sort of used to roll up her sleeves because she worked hard and that's how she ran the household. The fact that she'd had a terrible experience during the war just didn't occur to us.
She only started talking about it when I got married, and David started talking to her about it. And we really didn't know much about the Holocaust. No one did in those days. In fact, Leah tried to book her to go to Auschwitz, and I said, Leah, you're crazy. She doesn't want to go to Auschwitz. Why are you doing that?
My grandson, Daniel Goldberg, came to me and said, would you like to go to Auschwitz? Would I like to go to Auschwitz? No way, yes. I thought he's lost it.
A combination of Daniel and Daniel Rowe told her that she should go back because the next generation has to know what happened.
And then Donnell phoned me to say, Mummy's agreed to go to Auschwitz. I said, rubbish, you're talking rubbish.
I said, all right, I'll try, because he's such a wonderful kid that if I tell him to jump off the roof, he would say, no problem. How can I refuse him? It's not possible. So I went.
Bobby returned to Auschwitz for the first time in 2006 on a journey organized by JRoots.
And really, I took it much better than I expected to take it. They were all very nice to me. They all helped me to get over this feeling. But on the other hand, I walked into Auschwitz and I thought, it's a joke. It's a proper joke. I laughed. It looked so beautiful, and it's like a tourist attraction. It didn't make me feel anything, because it wasn't where I was. There wasn't any chimneys burning, and it didn't bother me. It didn't affect me the way I thought it will affect me.
Astonishingly, there is a photographic record of Bobby's arrival in 1944. The only pictures ever taken of Jewish deportees arriving at the extermination camp were compiled in the Auschwitz album. Bobby can be clearly seen on the day her train pulled in.
I was with all the women just going to the baths, and we were given our clothes and cloaks and soup, nothing warm, and it was very, very cold, and had tattooed. And all of a sudden I saw somebody with a striped uniform. He must have gone first to get changed or bathed or whatever. And it looked funny that his trousers were too short, his sleeves were too short. And in my mind I thought that could be my father, because he was very tall. And I picked my head up and it is my father. Now, this was after the shaving, so he didn't recognize me. I recognized him, and I spoke to him. I said, Daddy, what is this flame? What are these chimneys doing? So my father said, don't worry about it. Look how many people there are here. They're probably the breaking bread or something, that's why. Did he know what it was? I don't know. And he got hold of my shoulders, said, you have to be strong, you have to be firm, and you have to survive. Remember, you've got to look after yourself, because you have to look after Mommy and the boys when you get back. Yeah. But next day we had to get up at 3 o'clock to do the counting. It's called a Zählappell. And I think there was still snow, and I just remember the tremendous cold. And we, like dummies, we did it. We went, we stood outside, and stood outside for ages. Ages and ages, very cold, very, very cold. And then there was one person who was there before us, and he just started whispering to us what's going to happen. Don't faint, don't sit down, don't move, don't do this, don't do that, and keep on pinching your cheeks, so that you should look healthy, because if you don't look healthy, they don't need you for work. We got into this bed somehow, and then a couple will come and hit you, and the pain was tremendous. It's very painful. And you just try to shiver up into a small little bundle that they shouldn't see you. When you came to your breath, somebody else took it. You had no other thought except how to survive.
The complex of gas chambers and crematoria was run with ruthless efficiency, using prisoners to marshal the victims and to sort out their possessions. That was the task Bobby was assigned to. The place she worked was nicknamed Canada.
This is where I worked, and I don't quite remember exactly where, which spot or which room, but this is the place. So we collected the clothes and sorted it. You put sheets out all over, and put cardigans in one, shoes in one, and then you coast the bundles and put it on a pile. And that after standing, walking, and eventually we got something, a small piece of bread. It was about this size, and a bowl of so-called soup. And And the work was very, very hard and very military and very, had to be exact and mustn't talk and mustn't think. And then all of a sudden you find you're hungry. You know, when is the next meal? But there is no next meal. That was the meal.
Often valuables were left among the piles of possessions. And one day when Bobby was sorting through the clothes and bags, she came across a box of familiar-looking keepsakes belonging to her mother, including a plait of her own hair.
I found my mother's book where I was sorting when I was in Canada, and in it I found a shawl and my plaits. In the ghetto, they cut it with very long hair, very big, thick hair, and they cut it. And she put that in her, to put the ribbons on it and put it in a bag and put it in her. But there also was a shawl which my grandmother sent just before they had the connections, just the last thing. And I took it with me to the barrack. And the girls nearly killed me. You know what you're doing? We can all be shot because of this shawl. And yeah, I couldn't keep it, and it was very sad. And then one day we were sorting, and there was a fabulous Chinese or Japanese dressing gown. And my friend said, you know, this is such a beautiful dressing gown, but look at the buttons, they're all uneven. So we opened one button, and the whole dressing gown was buttons through. It was all diamonds covered with material. And we sorted it out, we gave it to each girl, got 2. And the next day, one of the fellows came, and he knew I was speaking Yiddish, so he always called me. And he said, if you have a lot of diamonds, each one of you give me a pair of shoes, and we'll put these diamonds into the heels of your shoes.
She was then reassigned to work outside the crematorium itself. Today, all that remains of the building is a pile of bricks.
Worked in the crematorium, I knew what it was, no? I mean, you could not know when they went in and started shouting, Schmeiß Israel, why did they shout? I mean, and they never came out, so, you know, we knew straight away. We were told, actually, the couples told us what went on there. If you believed it, okay, if you didn't, you didn't. This feels very funny. I haven't been to this one for 70 years. And it's not very pleasant. This was one of the rooms where the people arrived to go to the crematorium. And they came inside and got undressed in one of the rooms. And we came in after they left that room and went to the next room. And we kept on picking these clothes and all their belongings, putting them in a big sheet, knotting them up and taking them to the barracks to be sorted. And as they were going up to the next room, if we heard them say Shema Israel, all of them together, that was the most part of the work, which was a relief, because we knew they're not suffering anymore, it's over. And to think of it that we could say that. And one day I saw a queue going into the crematorium, and one of them was my grandmother. And she said to me, where is Mummy? And so I said, Mummy's gone in there, and you will also go in there, and you will be together. The youngest looked after the older ones, and there was a couple of people who were 40s, which was very old for Auschwitz, alive. And I always felt sorry for them, so I tried to steal. And I don't know how I managed to be caught, so he told me to bend down. 2 SS was holding me, and he was just beating me and beating me. The stick broke, and then took another one. I think it took 3, but after the second, you don't have pain anymore. I couldn't walk, they carried me in and got me into hospital. The hospital overlooked the crematorium, so you could hear and see everything what was going on, because I had to lie on my stomach, and I was watching it.
As the pace of deportations became ever more frantic, rumors about the horrific reality of Auschwitz had spread. Deportees arriving from Poland were all too aware that the so-called showers were nothing of the sort.
So when they came to the crematorium, they wouldn't go in. And they're screaming and crying and shouting and shooting till they pushed them in. It was horrendous to watch it, really horrendous. And I couldn't help it. I didn't know where to put my head. But the noise was still there. And eventually they got in. And that last Shema Israel, they only said it once, but that was the last breath. They probably realized the gas was already in, and then all in unity screamed Shema Israel, which was a horrendous, it still rings in my bell, that kind of a, whenever anybody says Shema Israel when I go to shul, it's just really horrendous.
In early 1945, with the Allies closing in, the SS decided to evacuate Auschwitz, destroying the evidence of their handiwork. Any prisoner fit enough to walk was force-marched through the snow on the infamous Death March. As they progressed, those too weak to continue were shot or left for dead.
There was a lady who was 42 years old, and she asked me if she could walk with me. So she was leaning on me all the time. And she was help to me too, because you know you can't sleep walking if you've got somebody to lead you. So we took turns occasionally to have a little sleep, walking sleep. And I knew if I stop, she will also stop. And that will be the end of both of us. And I couldn't take this responsibility.
Even Bergen Belsen had no room for the walking dead. Eventually they reached another camp, Neustadt-Gleiver.
Our official being there was that we have to dig trenches, you know, when you are ill and you not eat. But we had to try. And one day I went down there and tried to pick up the shovel, and I couldn't. And the SS was sitting on the top of this hole. It was deep. And he asked me how old I am. And I said, oh, by then I was 16. And I said, why do you ask? Oh, I don't know how I got the guts to ask him. And he said, because I've been in the war for 7 years, and I left a daughter who would be 16 now. And I just wondered what it looks like. Oh, I said, I'm sure she looks better than me. So I had these 2 diamonds, and I told him if I give him a valuable piece, would he give me a packet of salt, which sounds absolutely ridiculous, but that's the only thing I wanted, because I didn't think if he gives me food, I can swallow it. But I needed salt. We all needed salt. There must be some chemical in it which the body needs. Anyhow, he gave me a packet of salt, a small packet, but I remember sitting around and licking the salt. And then a couple of days later, I gave him this huge diamond. And the next day, I said, if you bring me a big urn of food, a soup, where we can share a little bit, I'll give you another diamond. He did. He brought me vegetable soup. And maybe that had part of my, you know, that moment it helped me to survive. So I was once rich.
But as the Russian army approached to liberate them, the weakened prisoners were struck by a fierce typhus epidemic. Soon Bobby became sick and was given up for dead.
In the morning, the thing was that whoever was alive had to take the bodies out. But there was no barrier, nowhere to take, so we just put them outside, and it was like a mountain of bodies out there. And but I was told this story. I wasn't conscious anymore. And then the Russians came in, and there was somebody like a general, somebody high up in whatever, and all the soldiers marched behind them to see what there is. And it seems I slipped down and I blocked the way. So this first man who came picked my hand up to push me away, and he said, oh, she's still alive. So they bought a stretcher and they took me to a hospital. And this fellow came every day and looked after me and told the nurses what to do. I got a bit better one day. He came in and looked around. There was nobody around. And he bent down to me and he said, in Yiddish, started to talk to me in Yiddish. And he said he's a doctor and he's a Jew.
Luck did play a part in Bobby's survival, but more vital than that was the fighting spirit inspired by the memory of her father's parting words.
He gave me this speech, kind of a semi-brocha, semi-something, you know, like, and I never forgot it. And all the time I was in Auschwitz, sometimes I thought, why did he give me such a hard task? And just, it kept me going. Sometimes I was desperate and I thought, this is the end, I can't anymore. And then I remembered that he said, Hashem will help you, and you help yourself and look after yourself. And that pushed me along, because you only needed willpower to survive, because there was no food and no drink, and it was cold and cruel and everything. But when you had a few words and you believed in Hashem, you believed in your father, so you just went along, and it was a very tough request, but that did make me survive, probably. There are questions, obviously. Why my mother and not me? She was a better person than me. Or why all those Rabbonim? Why all those people? Why? And of course, it doesn't leave you. You play with it. Maybe this, maybe that. And it all comes down, maybe, because we have got Hashem, and that's how it happens. We have to accept it, and we have got to live with it, and you have to believe in it.
3 long and lonely years after liberation, Bobby found her way to Switzerland. There she had a cousin who was known for offering refuge to Jews fleeing the Holocaust.
I've decided to go to Geneva when I found my cousin, who was he was a rabbi himself, but his father was a very famous rabbi who lived in Kleinverdan, and he was called Rosenbaum, and this was my cousin Pinchas Rosenbaum, and he got married and lived in Geneva, and he sent papers and tickets and things, so I went to live with him in Geneva. And I arrived there at the beginning of the week, and Friday night we were going to eat with them. And I remember going upstairs. They lived up on the next floor upstairs, and I went there Friday night. And that was the most horrendous evening I've ever had, because as I walked in, the table was set for Shabbos, exactly the same as at home. The same candlestick, the same kind of dishes, the same weight was set. And there was a father, a mother, an only daughter, the oldest one, like me, and 2 brothers. And my cousin sitting there, who used to be in yeshiva where we lived, and he was always Shabbos at our table. So it was my table. And it was very, very, very difficult. I couldn't take it. It was painful. So after every course, I went out to the bathroom and stayed there a bit, pretending I didn't ever want to show anybody ever that I'm suffering. I didn't want the pity. I just wanted to be left. And eventually I came in, and the worst was when my cousin said, may I just cheer her up, and started singing my father's Zmira's songs. And that was really very, very, very painful, but did something to me. That whole setup, like reality came through, that's what I was looking for. That I didn't realize it, but it was like a jerk. Somebody jerked me, get out of that and come back to this. And then I decided that whatever I do, I will continue the way I saw that table, like at home.
Eventually, Bobby married and settled in Manchester, where she still lives surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren.
It was a dream that I will get married. And when I got married, it was a dream that I had children. And I still think it's all a miracle somehow, because we never expected it. dreamed that will ever come true.
Her general attitude towards life, appreciating the fact that she survived, maybe having a bit of a conscience that she survived, and there was always giving, very little expected back. We had a very happy childhood.
I think, see, my own and my own family's, my sisters and brothers' experience of my mother is as a mother. It's not as a concentration camp survivor.
I think her dedication to bringing us up and to self-sacrifice must have been a reflection of her survival, really.
My kids are being almost looked after more from her than from me, and I'm the mother, and they go to her for the love and the attention and the affection.
My mother's the youngest out of all the children, and we live with Bobby, and she does everything for us. I feel she's part of me, part of my life.
She's never like self-pity.
No, no.
And the word depression is just something she just has an aversion to. It's not in her vocabulary, really.
People usually say to me, do you hate the Germans? Obviously, I'm supposed to hate the Germans, and I probably am, but I'm fighting that feeling of hate, because hate is a destruction. You destroy yourself.
She's never bitter, that's amazing. She's not bitter. People say, I'm not buying German, I'm not buying this, and my mother's not bitter. She says, you know, why cut your nose to spite your face? She's got no bitterness in her at all, and that really is unbelievable.
Bobby was just always smiling, really always smiling, and you get such a good feeling from her. There's no feeling sorry for herself. There's none of that at all. Like, it's just incredible to see, because she's got every right to feel sorry for herself.
When you walk around someone who can point out certain places, they can say, this is where I slept, this is where I worked, this is where I was beaten, and this is where we were fed our morsel of bread and a tiny bit of water. It brings everything into reality.
To try and understand what she went through was really hard, but when we were actually there, we were almost, for me personally, I was almost experiencing what she went through whilst we were walking through Auschwitz, and it was just a surreal, weird feeling.
She went through so much pain, and yet she still came out so passionate and inspired to go and do something and make something of her life and keep with the religion, keep with the morals, keep with the tradition.
And I'm glad I did it, and I'm very glad that I do it for other people. And my belief in life was that if you do things for other people, you're not busy with your sorrow. You forget yourself because you're busy doing good for others.
She doesn't realise the effect it has on people, because she's a very natural person and a positive thinking in this respect.
I think my grandmother wanted to finally take me because I feel so close to her, and I think she wanted me to see and have a sense, maybe to pass on to like my children, and to be with her and realise what she went through.
When you go with Bobby, you just get, it's very personable. You realise that, yes, millions and thousands, there's massive numbers and huge amounts, but when you see one person, it just makes it real.
The way Bobby brought it across was everyone has to know about it. You have to know. I was just like capturing the moment. Like I'm going to be the one to pass this on. I have to like capture every moment and understand every moment.
Going on a trip with Bobby to Poland and seeing what she went through, and seeing her go back and talk about it, and seeing how genuine she is about being religious, gives you something that you can't take from going to a shir or being in a Hebrew lesson as a teenager or in school as a child. It's something so real, it touches you. It can't help but touch you.
She doesn't have to say too much. Her presence is felt, but when she does speak, it's fantastic.
It's incredible to think that somebody could go through what she's been through and to survive and come out and have such a successful life afterwards, having seen and been through such atrocities.
Going with her is invigorating. You don't come back feeling sad. You come back feeling empowered.
I never forget the moment when She walked me down the path, and I held her hand to the crematorium. You know, it's something you never forget, and it makes you realise how, it puts everything into perspective.
When somebody said, are you going back to Auschwitz, my first thing is obviously. I couldn't stop it because I could see that we're doing something which is worthwhile doing. We lost so many people in the war. We lost so many people marrying out. At least if we can manage to keep them, at least to marrying out.
Bobby's priorities have remained the same, recreating the Jewish world she loved and lost.
To me, my family is the most precious thing on the world. I don't want diamonds, I want them. And I want them to be happy because my family is, to me, the best in the world. And if you want to go forward, you think of the nice things. You think of the Shabbos, you think of the religion, you think of the happiness at any time there was a simcha in the family. I don't dwell on it, that why isn't my father here, or why is my mother here, and why, you know, it's there, and you just suppress it because it's too big to think about it. I'm 70 years already nearly that I'm out, and there's not a day that I don't think, why did I do that, and why did I think that, and how did I do it, and there's no answer. There's no answer. The only thing you have to have is Hashem. Somebody asked me at the bris recently, where was Hashem when you were in Auschwitz? I said, with me.
Oy lahagid ba boiker chazdecho Oy lahagid ba boiker chazdecho Ve'emunoscho ba'leilois Ve'emunoscho ba'leilois